The morning sky above New Geneva cracked open like a broken egg, spilling golden light across the research facility, where Dr. Sarah Chen was analyzing soil samples from Mars. She looked up from her microscope just as the air itself seemed to tear apart, revealing a swirling portal of blue and silver energy that hung 20 feet above the courtyard. What emerged made every scientist in the building drop their equipment and stare. She was massive, nearly 12 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like polished copper and hair that flowed like liquid starlight. Her dress, if it could be called that, appeared to be woven from some material that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue, embedded with what looked like tiny galaxies. But it was her face that caught everyone's attention first. Beautiful beyond human comprehension, with large golden eyes that held intelligence and something else. Fear. Then they saw the bruises. Dark marks covered her arms and neck, some fresh and angry, others fading to sickly yellow-green. Her left eye was swollen, and there was dried blood at the corner of her mouth. She clutched something to her chest, a small device that pulsed with the same energy as the portal behind her. The giant woman stumbled as she stepped through, falling to her knees in the courtyard. The portal snapped shut behind her with a sound like thunder, leaving only the smell of ozone and something floral that none of the humans could identify. Dr. Chen was the first to move. Years of xenobiology training kicked in as she approached slowly, hands visible and empty. The alien woman's head snapped up, those golden eyes wide with panic. She spoke in a voice like wind chimes, words that flowed like music but made no sense to human ears. "It's okay," Sarah said softly, stopping 10 feet away. "You're safe now. We won't hurt you." The alien's translation device, for that's what the pulsing object had to be, suddenly flickered to life. The woman's musical words became understandable, though accented with something that reminded Sarah of distant storms. "Please," the alien woman gasped. "They cannot find me here. I have brought shame to the hegemony by running, but I could not bear another beating." Dr. Chen felt her stomach clench. This magnificent being, this creature who looked like she could reshape mountains with her bare hands, was a victim of domestic violence. The irony wasn't lost on her. In all their speculation about first contact with alien species, nobody had considered that their visitors might be refugees fleeing abuse. "What's your name?" Sarah asked, settling slowly onto the ground to make herself less threatening. "I am Kythera of the Seventh Moon, daughter of Admiral Vexhai, and," she paused, her voice breaking slightly, "promised bride to Warlord Crexton of the Hegemony Battle Fleet." The word sent a chill through everyone listening. Promised bride, warlord. This wasn't just domestic abuse, this was something far more political and dangerous. "I need medical attention," Kythera continued, touching her swollen eye gingerly. "And I need to warn you, my escape will not go unnoticed. The hegemony does not lose face lightly, especially not to primitives." Primitives. The word stung, but Sarah pushed past it. "Can you tell us about the hegemony?" Kythera's laugh was bitter. "You truly know nothing, do you? The hegemony controls this entire galactic arm. 47 species serve under their rule, providing resources, troops, and tribute. Your little blue world has been marked for integration for 3 of your decades, but you were deemed too violent and unpredictable for peaceful annexation." She struggled to her feet, towering over the assembled humans. Despite her injuries, her presence was commanding, regal even. The plan was simple. I was to arrive as a bride gift to your leaders, a symbol of the hegemony's generous nature. A peaceful integration would follow, with your species taking their place as servants and soldiers. Dr. Chen felt the blood drain from her face. "And now? Now?" Kythera touched her bruised throat. "Now they will come in force. Crexton will not suffer the humiliation of a runaway bride, especially not one who flees to primitives. He will glass your cities from orbit and hunt me through the ashes." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humanity's first contact with alien life was supposed to be a moment of wonder, of infinite possibility. Instead, they'd just become harboring fugitives from an interstellar empire that apparently viewed humans as nothing more than potential slaves. "How long do we have?" she asked. Kythera consulted a device on her wrist that flickered with alien symbols. "Their fastest ships could reach here in 6 of your days. But Crexton will want to make a statement. He'll bring a full battle fleet, perhaps 200 ships. 200 ships. Humanity didn't even have one vessel capable of leaving the solar system, and these aliens were coming with an armada. "There is something else," Kythera said quietly, her golden eyes meeting Sarah's. "Something the hegemony does not know about your species. Something I observed during my preparation for this mission." "What?" "You fight, not just for territory or resources, but for principles, for each other, for strangers you've never met." She gestured at the medical team that was now approaching with a stretcher. "These healers do not know me, yet they come to help." In the hegemony, only family obligations or direct orders would motivate such behavior. Sarah felt a spark of something. Not quite hope, but defiance. "You think that matters against superior technology and numbers?" Kythera was quiet for a long moment, allowing the medical team to begin examining her injuries. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note that Sarah couldn't quite identify. "I have studied your histories, Dr. Chen. Your species has a remarkable habit of winning wars they should lose." The underground bunker beneath Geneva buzzed with activity as the world's greatest minds gathered around Kythera. 3 days had passed since her arrival, and the giant alien had become both teacher and patient as humanity scrambled to understand what they were facing. General Marcus Webb stood before a holographic display that Kythera had helped them construct using her technology and human computers. The three-dimensional map showed a terrifying picture. The local galactic arm dotted with thousands of worlds under hegemony control, and Earth sitting like a lone island in a sea of enemies. "Tell us about their military capabilities," Webb commanded, his weathered face grim. Kythera, now seated in a specially constructed chair that could support her massive frame, gestured with one bandaged hand. Her injuries were healing remarkably fast. Apparently, her species recovered from trauma much quicker than humans. "Each hegemony dreadnought carries enough firepower to crack a moon. Their shields can withstand the impact of nuclear weapons, and their soldiers are genetically enhanced for combat." Dr. Chen, who had barely left Kythera's side since the alien's arrival, looked up from her tablet. "But you said something about our fighting spirit mattering." "What did you mean?" Kythera's golden eyes brightened slightly. "The hegemony conquers through overwhelming force and psychological warfare. Their enemies surrender before the battle truly begins because they know resistance is futile. But I have studied your histories, World War II, Vietnam, Afghanistan. Your species has a troubling tendency to fight impossible odds and somehow emerge victorious." "Troubling?" asked Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's military strategist. "From the hegemony's perspective, yes. They have conquered 47 species in the last millennium. Each one submitted after a single demonstration of superior force. The few that resisted were crushed so completely that their homeworlds became cautionary tales." General Webb leaned forward. "And yet you think we're different?" Kythera stood slowly, her imposing height casting shadows across the room. Despite her injuries, there was something magnificent about her, an alien princess carrying herself with the dignity of her royal bloodline. "Let me show you something that the hegemony intelligence files contained about your species." She touched her wrist device, and the holographic display changed. Images flashed across the screen: the beaches of Normandy, the tunnels of Kuchai, the mountains of Afghanistan, the resistance fighters of occupied France. The hegemony analysts were puzzled by these conflicts. In each case, the technologically superior force should have achieved quick victory. Instead, they found themselves trapped in long, bloody campaigns against enemies who refused to acknowledge defeat. The room fell silent as more images appeared. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the Battle of Thermopylae, the Siege of Stalingrad, humanity's greatest moments of defiance against impossible odds. The conclusion in the intelligence report, Kythera continued, was that humans possess an irrational willingness to continue fighting, even when victory is mathematically impossible. This was listed as a significant obstacle to peaceful integration. Dr. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. That's why they decided on the bride approach. They thought it would bypass our fighting instincts. Exactly. A peaceful cultural exchange followed by gradual integration. No opportunity for your warriors to rally the population for resistance. Kythera's expression darkened, but Crexton was never patient enough for such subtlety. He pushed the timeline, demanded immediate submission to his authority. "When I protested the treatment of prospective human servants during our preparation, She touched her healing bruises unconsciously. "He beat you." General Webb finished quietly. The first time, yes, but it was not the last. Each day brought new violence, new humiliations. I realized that this was to be my fate, and eventually the fate of your entire species under hegemony rule. Dr. Tanaka was studying the star charts with intense focus. You mentioned that Earth has been marked for integration for 30 years. Why did they wait so long? Kithara's laugh was bitter. Because you were developing too quickly. When the first surveillance began, you had just split the atom. By the time they finalized invasion plans, you had computers and space travel. Each year you delayed was another leap forward in your capabilities. So they know about our nuclear weapons? Webb asked. They know about everything up until my departure 6 months ago. Satellites, nuclear arsenals, internet communications, genetic engineering, all of it is in their files. The implications were staggering. Humanity's greatest military secrets were already known to the enemy. But Dr. Chen was thinking about something else entirely. Kithara, you said you studied our histories during your preparation. What else did you learn about us? The alien woman tilted her head, considering the question. Your art intrigued me. Music, literature, visual arts. No other species in the hegemony creates beauty for its own sake. Most focus purely on function and efficiency. She gestured to the walls around them, where someone had hung reproductions of famous paintings alongside technical schematics. Even here in a military bunker, you surround yourselves with unnecessary beauty. The hegemony finds this wasteful. What else? Your treatment of your own wounded and weak. In most hegemony species, those who cannot contribute are abandoned or eliminated. But humans build hospitals, schools for disabled children, homes for the elderly, another waste of resources according to the files. General Webb was beginning to understand. You're saying they don't just underestimate our military capabilities. They fundamentally misunderstand what drives us. Yes. The hegemony sees only our statistics, population numbers, industrial capacity, military hardware. They have no concept of what humans call morale or inspiration or sacrifice for abstract principles. Dr. Chen stood up suddenly, pacing to the holographic display. Show me their military doctrine. How do they typically conduct invasions? Kithara manipulated the controls and new images appeared. Massive ships appearing in orbit, followed by immediate bombardment of major population centers and military installations. Quick, devastating strikes designed to break the enemy's will to resist. They will expect immediate surrender after the first demonstration of force, Kithara explained. When it doesn't come, they will escalate until your cities burn. And if we somehow survive the initial assault, then they will land ground forces and begin systematic extermination. No hegemony force has ever required more than 30 days to complete a planetary conquest. The room fell silent again, as the magnitude of their situation sank in. Earth had less than 3 days before the arrival of a force that had never known defeat, armed with technology beyond human comprehension. But General Webb was smiling grimly. Kithara, in all your studies of human history, did you notice something we do particularly well? Sir, we have a bad habit of being the first to do something that's never been done before. The next 48 hours transformed Earth into a world at war, but unlike any war humanity had ever prepared for. In secret military bases and civilian laboratories across the globe, the most ambitious crash program in human history began to take shape. Dr. Chen stood in what had once been CERN's particle accelerator facility, now converted into a massive production line. Teams of engineers worked alongside Kithara to reverse engineer fragments of hegemony technology that the alien princess had smuggled in her personal effects. A communication device, a small shield generator, and most importantly, a weapon that could punch through hegemony armor. The energy matrix is quantum entangled, Kithara explained to the assembled physicists, her massive hands delicately manipulating components that looked like crystallized lightning. Each pulse modulates through 17 different dimensional frequencies simultaneously. Dr. James Morrison, Nobel laureate and quantum mechanics expert, shook his head in amazement. We don't have the infrastructure to replicate this level of complexity. Then don't replicate it, suggested Dr. Chen. Adapt it. Humans have always been good at making simple solutions work better than complex ones. That philosophy was being applied everywhere. In the Mojave Desert, weapons engineers were strapping hegemony energy cores to conventional missiles, creating hybrid weapons that could theoretically damage alien shields. In the North Atlantic, Naval architects were designing ships that could use hegemony shield technology to protect human vessels during the coming orbital bombardment. But the most ambitious project was taking place in the mountains of Colorado, where General Webb had established his command center. Here, military strategists from every nation worked together to develop tactics for fighting an enemy that had never been defeated. Kythera stood before a massive planning table, holographic displays showing Earth's defensive positions. Her injuries had healed completely now, revealing the true majesty of her alien heritage. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone born to command armies. Crexton will bring between 150 and 200 ships, she explained. He'll position the dreadnoughts in high orbit for bombardment, while smaller vessels handle ground assault. The attack pattern is always the same. Demonstrate overwhelming force, demand surrender, then systematically destroy population centers until resistance breaks. Colonel Sarah Hayes, the Air Force's top tactical planner, studied the projections. How long between the demand for surrender and the bombardment? Standard protocol is 1 hours. Enough time for the leaders to consider their options, but not enough to mount a meaningful response. General Webb smiled grimly. Then we'll have to make sure our response is already waiting for them. The plan that emerged was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of meeting the hegemony fleet in direct combat, which would be suicide, humanity would do what it had always done best: adapt, improvise, and fight dirty. Phase 1 involved every satellite and space station in Earth's orbit. Working around the clock, engineers had equipped them with crude but effective weapons, nuclear devices, kinetic projectiles, and experimental energy weapons based on Kythera's technology. They wouldn't destroy hegemony ships, but they might damage them enough to level the playing field. Phase 2 was pure human cunning. Instead of defending major cities, most of the population would be evacuated to underground bunkers and remote locations. The hegemony would find themselves bombing empty targets while the real resistance operated from hidden bases. Phase 3 was the counterattack. Using captured hegemony technology, small human ships would attempt to board and capture alien vessels. It was a desperate gamble, but Kythera had revealed a crucial weakness in hegemony doctrine. They had never faced an enemy crazy enough to attempt boarding actions against superior forces. Dr. Chen found herself assigned to the most dangerous part of the plan. She would remain with Kythera at the main command center, serving as liaison between human forces and their alien advisor. When the hegemony arrived, they would be the primary targets of the enemy's wrath. You don't have to do this, Kythera told her privately as they watched the final preparations. Your death would serve no strategic purpose. Neither would running, Chen replied. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't change your mind about helping us. Kythera's golden eyes flashed with something that might have been amusement. You still don't trust me completely. I trust you. But I also know that when your former fiancé arrives with enough firepower to turn Earth into an asteroid field, your survival instincts might override your moral convictions. You are wise for a primitive. Kythera's tone was teasing now, the formal hostility replaced by something approaching friendship. But you underestimate what your species has already accomplished. What do you mean? Kythera gestured at the bustling command center around them. 3 days ago, your world was divided into competing nations with different languages, cultures, and political systems. Today, they work together as a single entity with a common purpose. The hegemony has never encountered such rapid unification in response to external threat. It was true. The arrival of the alien bride had accomplished what centuries of diplomacy had failed to achieve. National boundaries had become meaningless overnight as humanity united against the coming invasion. Russian engineers worked alongside American physicists. Chinese strategists planned operations with European commanders, and developing nations contributed resources and personnel without regard for traditional political divisions. Is that why you really ran? Chen asked. Not just because of the abuse, but because you saw something in humanity that the hegemony missed? Kythera was quiet for a long moment, watching human technicians make final adjustments to hybrid weapons that shouldn't have been possible. I told you that I studied your histories. What I didn't mention was that I also studied your music, your literature, your art. For the first time in my life, I encountered a species that created beauty for no reason except that beauty should exist. She turned to face Chen directly, her towering height no longer intimidating but somehow comforting. The hegemony conquers worlds, Dr. Chen, but you create them. I ran because I realized that helping Crexton destroy Earth would be like burning down the greatest library in the galaxy. Before Chen could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. On the main display, red indicators flashed as deep space monitoring stations detected the approaching hegemony fleet. 216 ships, reported the tracking officer. ETA 18 hours. General Webb's voice echoed through the facility. All stations, this is command. Execute Phase 1 preparations. As of this moment, Earth is officially at war. Kithra straightened to her full height, every inch the alien princess despite her human allies. Crexton arrives with the largest fleet he has ever commanded. He intends to make an example of your world that will be remembered for 1,000 years. Dr. Chen checked her equipment one final time, making sure the human hegemony communication array was functioning properly. In 18 hours, she would help humanity speak to its first alien invaders. Let's make sure he gets an example he'll never forget, she said quietly. Just not the one he's expecting. The hegemony fleet materialized in Earth's outer system like a swarm of predatory insects, their dark hulls gleaming against the starfield. 216 vessels of various sizes, from massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed human cities to sleek fighters that moved like living things through the vacuum. In the Colorado Command Center, Dr. Chen watched the displays with a mixture of terror and fascination. Each ship represented technology centuries beyond human capability, crewed by beings who had never known defeat. Against them, humanity had managed to deploy barely 300 modified satellites and space stations, most armed with weapons that were theoretical at best. Magnificent, aren't they? Kithara's voice carried a note of pride despite everything. The flagship alone carries more firepower than your entire nuclear arsenal. General Webb studied the tactical display with the calm expression of a man who had made peace with impossible odds. Which one is Crexton's ship? Kithara pointed to the largest vessel, a massive construct that looked like a predatory fish crossed with a cathedral. The Eternal Conquest. 3 miles long, shields capable of withstanding supernova radiation, crew of 40,000. And our chances of damaging it? With conventional weapons? 0. Kithara's honesty was brutal but necessary. But your hybrid devices might be different. The energy signatures are unlike anything in hegemony databases. Communications Officer Martinez looked up from his station. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Audio and visual. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the interior of an alien bridge that seemed to be carved from black crystal. At its center stood a being that made even Kithara look small, nearly 15 feet tall, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that burned with red fire. This had to be Warlord Crexton, and the aura of casual brutality that surrounded him was palpable even through the transmission. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone, translated by hegemony technology into perfect English. Primitives of the Third Planet. I am Crexton, Supreme Commander of the 47th Battle Fleet. You harbor a criminal who belongs to me. Surrender her immediately, along with your unconditional submission to hegemony authority, and your deaths will be swift. Dr. Chen felt her hands trembling as she activated the human response system. This was it. Humanity's first official contact with an alien intelligence, and it was a declaration of war. General Webb stepped forward, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Warlord Crexton, this is General Marcus Webb, speaking for the United Earth Defense Force. The individual you seek has requested asylum, which we have granted. We do not recognize hegemony authority over our world or our people. Crexton's laugh was like breaking glass. United Earth Defense Force? You have been catalogued primitive. Your military capabilities are well known. You possess no vessels capable of interstellar travel, no weapons that can penetrate hegemony shields, and no technology that poses any threat to our forces. Then you won't mind if we keep our guest, Webb replied calmly. The alien warlord's expression shifted to something approaching amusement. You display the same irrational behavior noted in your species files. Very well. You have one of your hours to reconsider. After that, I will demonstrate why the hegemony has ruled this galaxy for a millennium. The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in tense silence. Well, said Colonel Hayes, that could have gone worse. How? Asked Dr. Chen. He could have started shooting immediately. Cathera was studying the tactical display with growing concern. This deployment is wrong. Crexton is positioning his ships for total planetary annihilation, not conquest. He intends to glass your entire world. General Webb felt ice in his veins. Why would he do that? You said the hegemony wanted to integrate us. Political necessity. By harboring me, you have humiliated him before his own fleet. He cannot allow that insult to stand, even if it means destroying valuable resources. The next hour passed with agonizing slowness. Across Earth, final preparations were made. Population centers emptied as people moved to underground shelters. Military units took up positions in hidden bases and converted mines. Nuclear submarines submerged to maximum depth, carrying the seeds of human civilization in case the surface became uninhabitable. But on space stations and satellite platforms across Earth's orbital space, modified weapon systems armed themselves and waited. Incoming transmission, Martinez announced. Crexton reappeared on the screen, his expression now coldly furious. Your hour has expired, primitives. Observe the futility of resistance. The first bombardment began with clinical precision. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking major population centers with the force of nuclear weapons. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. Each took multiple hits that should have reduced them to radioactive craters, but the hegemony weapons struck empty cities. The evacuation had been more complete than anyone dared hope. Instead of millions of casualties, the death toll numbered in the thousands. Tragic, but not the civilization-ending blow Crexton had intended. Phase 1. Execute, Webb ordered quietly. Across Earth's orbital space, every satellite and space station that could still function suddenly activated. Nuclear missiles launched from hidden platforms, kinetic projectiles fired from converted research stations, and experimental energy weapons powered by hegemony technology opened fire on the alien fleet. The hegemony had been expecting this response, of course. Their shields easily absorbed the nuclear detonations and deflected most of the kinetic rounds. But the hybrid energy weapons were different. Based on Cathara's technology and human engineering, they operated on frequencies the hegemony had never encountered. 3 alien destroyers lost shield coherence. 2 cruisers took serious hull damage. One of the massive dreadnoughts actually had to retreat from its bombardment position to deal with system failures. In the command center, cheers erupted as damage indicators flashed across the tactical display. For the first time in their military history, hegemony ships had been hurt by primitive weapons. But Crexton's response was swift and terrible. The entire alien fleet opened fire on Earth's orbital infrastructure, turning satellites and space stations into expanding clouds of debris in a matter of minutes. Humanity's first victory had lasted less than 10 minutes. Phase 2, Webb announced. All remaining units implement scatter protocol. Across the planet, human forces vanished into hidden bunkers, abandoned cities, and natural caverns. The hegemony found themselves facing an enemy that had suddenly stopped existing as a coherent target. Dr. Chen watched the tactical display as hegemony landing ships began descending toward major population centers. They're coming down to finish the job personally. Cathera nodded grimly. Standard doctrine. When orbital bombardment fails to break resistance, land troops and eliminate survivors manually. Then it's time for Phase 3. General Webb activated the final communication protocol, broadcasting on all frequencies. All units, this is command. The enemy is now within range. Commence boarding operations. What happened next violated every principle of space warfare known to the hegemony. Instead of deploying fighters or launching missiles, human forces began ramming attacks directly against alien vessels. Modified space shuttles, private spacecraft fitted with makeshift weapons, even converted cargo haulers, all of them loaded with human troops armed with hybrid weapons and an unshakable determination to make the enemy pay for every inch of ground. The first boarding party to reach an alien ship consisted of 12 Marines crammed into a cargo pod that had been fitted with hegemony shield technology. They punched through the hull of a hegemony destroyer and began fighting their way toward the bridge with weapons that could actually damage alien armor. Impossible. Crexton's voice echoed through space as reports flooded in from his fleet. No species attempts boarding actions against superior forces. It is tactical suicide. But humans had never been particularly concerned with tactical sanity. Within an hour, 6 hegemony vessels had been boarded. 3 had been captured. and one had been destroyed by human troops who detonated its reactor when they realized they couldn't hold their positions. For the first time in 1,000 years, the hegemony was losing ships to an enemy they had expected to crush in a matter of hours. "Sir," Communications Officer Martinez called out, "we're receiving surrender requests from 2 hegemony vessels. Their crews want to defect." Kythera stared at the tactical display in amazement. "This is unprecedented. Hegemony troops don't surrender. They don't defect. They follow orders until death." Dr. Chen realized what was happening. They're not fighting a normal enemy anymore. They're fighting humans, and humans have a very bad habit of making impossible things look easy. On the main screen, Crexton's face had gone from confident brutality to something approaching panic. His perfect war machine was being dismantled by primitives who refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. "Bring the fleet to close orbit," he commanded his subordinates. "If these primitives want a close fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." But as the massive hegemony ships descended toward Earth's atmosphere, General Webb was already implementing the final phase of humanity's desperate plan, and for the first time since the invasion began, he was actually smiling. The moment Crexton's fleet descended into Earth's atmosphere, they entered humanity's true killing ground. For 3 days, human engineers had been preparing for this possibility, turning the planet's own weather systems into weapons of war. Dr. Chen watched in amazement as the first hegemony dreadnought entered a massive storm system over the Pacific Ocean. What Crexton couldn't have known was that human meteorologists, working with technology reverse-engineered from Kythera's equipment, had been seeding storm clouds with particles that disrupted energy fields. "Lightning strike on the Eternal Conquest," reported Tracking Officer Singh. "Their shields are fluctuating. Natural lightning shouldn't have been able to affect hegemony technology." But these weren't natural storms anymore. Each bolt carried electromagnetic frequencies specifically tuned to interfere with alien shield matrices. The massive flagship shuddered as it took hit after hit from weaponized weather. But the real surprise came when human aircraft began their attacks. Instead of the primitive jets the hegemony expected, they found themselves facing fighters equipped with hybrid technology that made them nearly as fast and maneuverable as alien craft. Lieutenant Sarah Park, piloting one of the modified F-35s, locked onto a hegemony destroyer with weapons that combined human ingenuity and alien science. "Fox 3, she called out as her missile launched, a nuclear warhead wrapped in an energy field that allowed it to penetrate alien shields. The explosion lit up the sky over Nevada as the destroyer broke apart, its crew never understanding how primitive weapons had become lethal to their advanced technology. In the Colorado Command Center, General Webb coordinated the most complex battle in human history. On one screen, he watched boarding parties fight their way through alien corridors. On another, he tracked atmospheric battles between human and hegemony forces. A third display showed ground troops engaging alien landing parties with weapons that should have been impossible. "Status report," he called out. 17 hegemony vessels destroyed, 12 captured, 8 more requesting terms for surrender, Colonel Hayes announced. "But sir, we're taking heavy casualties. The boarding parties are suffering 80% losses. And they're still volunteering for new missions," Webb noted grimly. "What's our overall situation?" Kythera studied the tactical displays with something approaching awe. "Crexton has lost over 20% of his fleet. In hegemony history, no force has ever sustained such losses against a primitive species." Dr. Chen realized the full implications. This isn't just about Earth anymore, is it? If word gets out that humans can fight the hegemony to a standstill, other species will begin to hope, Kythera finished. Hope that resistance is possible, that the hegemony can be defeated. That was exactly what Crexton was beginning to understand. As reports flooded in from across his fleet, ships destroyed, crews captured, technology stolen by primitives, he realized that this wasn't just a military defeat. It was a political catastrophe that could destabilize the entire hegemony. "All ships, withdraw to high orbit," he commanded. "Prepare for planetary sterilization." The transmission was intercepted by human intelligence. Within minutes, Webb was receiving the translation. "He's going to destroy the entire planet," Martinez reported. "Some kind of weapon that can crack the mantle." Kythera went pale. "The Star Crusher. It's a weapon of last resort, forbidden for use on habitable worlds." But if Crexton thinks the political consequences of defeat outweigh the loss of resources, how long do we have? 20 minutes to charge the weapon systems. General Webb made the hardest decision of his life. All boarding parties' new primary objective. You are to capture or destroy hegemony vessels by any means necessary. Ramming attacks are authorized if boarding fails. What followed was 20 minutes of the most desperate fighting in human history. Across Earth's orbital space, human crews threw themselves at alien ships with a ferocity that shocked even Cathara. They rammed cargo shuttles into destroyer hulls, detonated nuclear devices inside alien engineering sections, and fought hand-to-hand battles in alien corridors using weapons that glowed with stolen alien technology. But it was Captain Maria Santos who changed everything. Leading a boarding party aboard a hegemony cruiser, she discovered something that no human had seen before: alien prisoners. In the ship's brig were beings from 6 different species, all of them captured resistance fighters from conquered worlds. "This is Captain Santos to command," she radioed. "You need to see this." The video feed showed dozens of alien prisoners, some barely humanoid, others completely unfamiliar. But all of them bore the same expression when they saw human troops: hope. Dr. Chen felt her heart racing as the implications became clear. "Kithara, are there resistance movements on other hegemony worlds?" "Small ones, scattered, mostly ineffective." Kithara paused, studying the video feed. "But they exist." General Webb was already thinking several moves ahead. "Captain Santos, can any of those prisoners operate hegemony communications equipment?" "Yes, sir. We've got a Velkari engineer here who says he can patch us into the hegemony command network." "Do it. Broadcast everything, the battles, the destroyed ships, the human tactics. Let every species in hegemony space see what's happening here." It was a gamble that could backfire spectacularly, but as the communications array came online and began broadcasting across multiple star systems, the effect was immediate and dramatic. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Crexton was receiving reports that his worst nightmare was coming true. Across the hegemony, resistance cells were activating. Ships were refusing orders. Entire planetary garrisons were reporting uprisings by supposedly pacified populations. "The primitives are inspiring rebellion," his intelligence officer reported. "Every species that sees these broadcasts is beginning to believe that the hegemony can be defeated." Crexton realized that destroying Earth would no longer be enough. The damage was already done. Humanity had accomplished something that 1,000 years of hegemony rule had made unthinkable. They had shown 47 enslaved species that resistance was possible, but he still had one card to play: "Bring me the human communication channel," he commanded. On Earth, General Webb found himself facing the alien warlord one final time. But now Crexton looked less like an invincible conqueror, and more like a desperate commander watching his empire crumble. "General Webb," Crexton began, his voice strained. "I offer terms. Complete withdrawal of hegemony forces from your system in exchange for an end to these broadcasts." Webb looked at Dr. Chen and Kithara, then back at the screen. "That's a generous offer, Warlord, but I'm afraid we're going to have to decline." "You would risk the destruction of your entire world for abstract principles?" "We would risk everything to ensure that what happened here today reaches every enslaved species in the galaxy," Webb replied calmly. "You see, Warlord, you made a fundamental error in your intelligence assessment." "Which was?" General Webb smiled coldly. "You assumed we were fighting for Earth. We're not. We're fighting for the idea that freedom is worth dying for, and ideas once released are very hard to kill." Crexton's expression shifted to something approaching respect. "You realize this means war between humanity and the entire hegemony?" "We will return with 1,000 ships. Then we'll be ready for them," Webb replied. "And we won't be fighting alone." As if to emphasize his point, new contacts appeared on the tactical display, ships jumping out of hyperspace near Earth. But these weren't hegemony vessels. They were alien ships from species Webb had never seen before, broadcasting human communication frequencies and offering alliance. The uprising had begun, and Earth had become its symbol. Crexton cut the transmission without another word, his fleet already beginning its retreat. But everyone in the command center knew this was just the beginning. Dr. Chen turned to Kithara, who was staring at the display in wonder. "So what happens now?" The alien princess straightened to her full height, no longer a refugee seeking asylum, but a leader ready to reclaim her destiny. "Now, Now we teach the galaxy something it has forgotten, how to fight for freedom. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy was no longer recognizable. What had begun as humanity's desperate fight for survival had transformed into the largest uprising in hegemony history, with 47 species simultaneously rising against their oppressors. Dr. Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Terra Station, humanity's first permanent orbital facility built with hybrid human-alien technology. Through the massive viewport, she could see ships from dozens of different species, docked at the station's arms, former hegemony slaves who had come to learn the art of rebellion from the species that had started it. All. The Consortium of Free Worlds now includes 31 species, reported Admiral Cathara, her new rank reflecting her role as humanity's primary alien liaison. The former princess had traded her elegant robes for a practical military uniform that somehow managed to look regal on her massive frame. The hegemony controls less than half the territory it did a year ago. General Webb, now commanding the Terra Defense Force, studied the holographic star chart that dominated the station's command center. Red markers showed hegemony strongholds, blue ones indicated free worlds, and green showed contested systems where battles raged daily. "What's the status of Operation Prometheus?" he asked. "The Velkari resistance has successfully liberated 3 more systems," Chen reported, consulting her tablet, "and the Zephyrian fleet just broke the blockade around their homeworld. They're requesting human tactical advisors." It had become a pattern across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for generations were rediscovering the concept of warfare as more than simple conquest. Human military advisors taught them guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, and the art of making impossible odds work in their favor. But the real revolution was technological. The combination of human ingenuity with alien science had produced weapons and defenses that neither side could have developed alone. Ships that could phase through solid matter, weapons that turned enemy energy against themselves, shields that actually grew stronger under attack. "Ma'am," called Communications Officer Martinez, now sporting the insignia of a consortium liaison, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Hegemony High Command." The main display activated, showing a being that looked like a cross between a spider and a crystal formation. This was Overlord Zephex, the Hegemony's supreme ruler, making his first direct contact with human leadership. When he spoke, his voice was like wind through broken glass. "Humans of Terra, I am Overlord Zephex speaking for the Hegemony High Command. We acknowledge your unexpected capabilities." Dr. Chen activated the response system, her role as humanity's chief diplomat having evolved naturally from her first contact with Cathara. "Overlord Zephex, I am Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking for the Consortium of Free Worlds. What brings you to our attention?" "The situation has become untenable. Your species has introduced concepts that threaten the stability of our entire civilization. We therefore propose a negotiated settlement." General Webb stepped forward. "What kind of settlement?" "Recognition of human sovereignty over your home system, and 3 additional star systems of your choosing. In exchange, you will cease all support for rebellion movements and allow normal hegemony operations to resume." The offer was more generous than anyone had expected. 4 star systems would give humanity room to grow and develop for centuries. But Chen could see the trap inherent in the proposal. And the species that have already joined the consortium will be allowed to return to their previous status as hegemony subjects. Their recent activities will be overlooked as temporary aberrations caused by human influence. Admiral Cathara stepped into view of the transmission, her presence causing visible shock among the hegemony delegation. "Hello, Zephex. Still trying to solve political problems with violence and intimidation, I see." Admiral Cathara. The Overlord's tone carried a mixture of respect and reproach. "Your father would be disappointed to see you leading primitives against your own people." "My people are whoever stands for freedom," Cathara replied calmly. "Something the hegemony seems to have forgotten." Dr. Chen realized this was humanity's moment to define what kind of galactic power they would become. They could accept the hegemony's offer, secure their own safety, and abandon the alien species that had looked to them for hope. Or they could continue down the path that had brought them to this moment. "Overlord Zephex," she began, "we appreciate your offer, but the consortium wasn't founded to secure humanity's survival. It was founded on the principle that every sentient species has the right to determine its own destiny. You would risk everything for abstract ideals? We would risk everything to ensure those ideals survive, General Webb interjected. You see, Overlord, you're still making the same mistake that cost you the first battle. You think this is about territory or resources or political control? What else could it be about? Hope, said Chen simply. When Kithra first arrived on Earth, she brought us two things: advance warning of your invasion and proof that resistance was possible. Now we're returning the favor to every enslaved species in the galaxy. The transmission chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. You realize, Zephex continued slowly, that this means total war, not the limited action that Crexton conducted, but the full military might of the hegemony focused on destroying your alliance. Then we'll meet it, Admiral Kithera said firmly. But you should understand something, Zephex. This galaxy has learned a new way to fight wars. The old rules no longer apply. As if summoned by her words, the tactical display lit up with hundreds of new contacts. Ships from across the consortium were jumping into Earth's system, not to hide behind humanity's protection, but to stand with them against whatever the hegemony might send. Belkari battleships that had learned to ram enemy vessels at faster-than-light speeds. Zephyrian fighters that could turn invisible to all known sensors. Crystalline entities that could shatter hegemony shields with harmonic resonance weapons. And at the center of it all, human ships that had become templates for controlled chaos. Unpredictable, adaptive, and absolutely lethal to anyone who underestimated them. This is your final answer? Overlord Zephex asked. Dr. Chen looked around the command center at the mixture of human and alien faces, all united by something the hegemony had never understood: the willingness to sacrifice everything for the freedom of others. This is our final answer, she confirmed. The consortium of free worlds stands together. We will not abandon our allies. We will not surrender our principles, and we will not stop fighting until every species in this galaxy has the right to choose its own path. Overlord Zephex's image flickered and disappeared without another word. Well, said General Webb with satisfaction, I think we can call that a successful diplomatic first contact. Sir, reported Martinez, long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements in hegemony space. It looks like they're mobilizing everything they have. How long until they arrive? 6 months, maybe 8. Dr. Chen moved to the observation deck, watching as ships from dozens of species maneuvered in formations that would have been impossible before humans taught them to think outside traditional tactical doctrine. In the distance, construction crews were putting the finishing touches on Terra Station's sister facility, a massive shipyard where human-alien hybrid vessels would be built to defend the growing consortium. Admiral Kithera joined her at the viewport. Do you ever regret it? Taking in a bruised alien bride and starting the largest war in galactic history? Chen thought about the question seriously. Earth's population had been reduced by the fighting. Billions of people now lived in constant danger, and humanity had made enemies of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. By any reasonable measure, granting Kithera asylum had been a catastrophic mistake. Ask me again when it's over, she said finally. But I think we did something important here. We proved that doing the right thing doesn't have to be the smart thing. And if we lose, then we lose fighting for something worth dying for. And maybe that will inspire someone else to try again. Kithera smiled, an expression that had become much more common since leaving behind her role as a political pawn. You know, when I first studied human culture, there was one concept I could never understand. The idea of a moral victory, winning something valuable even while losing the conflict itself. And now? Now I understand that it's the most human concept of all. You fight not to win, but to prove that some things are worth fighting for. As the two women watched, a new ship emerged from the construction yards, the first vessel designed entirely through human-alien cooperation. It was sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that combined the best of both technologies, but it also carried something else. On its hull, clearly visible, were the symbols of every species in the consortium. The ship represented more than military power. It was proof that different species could work together as equals, that technology could be shared rather than hoarded, and that freedom was a principle worth building a civilization around. 6 months later, when the hegemony's vast armada arrived at Earth expecting to find a broken alliance of primitive rebels, They instead found something that had never existed before in galactic history. A true confederation of free species, united not by conquest, but by